welcome back. As you've seen there, His Excellency Joseph Ayologo, former permanent representative to the UN in Geneva, former Nigerian ambassador in Switzerland. Good morning, and thank you for joining us on the program today. Well, a lot has since happened ever since the last time we had you on the program. Yesterday, news came through that the junta was open to negotiating with ECOWAS and their delegation. But about an hour ago, there were reports that there was an announcement by the spokesperson of that junta that they were going to prosecute deposed leader Bazoum for high treason. So all of those coming in thick and fast. So tell us, let's start from that. Aren't they conflicting signals if you say, yes, you're ready to negotiate, and then you prosecute the deposed leader for high treason? How do people respond to this?
Good morning, Chamberlain. Well, it is conflicting, but again, perhaps they are listening to the ECOWAS heads again, because I've looked at the resolutions. They don't seem to be compromising enough. So I don't know, I'm just guessing that the Coupists are going on with their own agenda in a way, carrying out the usual processing of a coup. I think the ECOWAS should begin quickly to dissuade them from doing any of these activities or penalties against the government. I mean, the former, the Ousted president, and just talk more about the future of the arrangements they have made to return to constitutionality. That is, election, what time, and all that, instead of talking more of having the standby force and all that, and some pressures that may seem to incite the Coupists to do more things that we don't want them to do.
At the same time, I mean, how do they do that successfully? Because part of what ECOWAS had demanded was reinstate the ousted leader. And then if the group says, the junta says they want to negotiate, but part of the key decisions or demands for ECOWAS is reinstating. Now they say no, that they will prosecute him for high treason. So if they were to come to the table to negotiate, because I mean, in law, they say, look, if we destroy the rest, so what's the point? So can we then say at this point in time that, of course, it will be a difficult negotiation if they don't hold on and find out if they can have some sort of leverage, because it looks as though they're taking away the leverage for that negotiation, saying, look, this is the non-issue because we will do what we have to do. So come up with something else upon which we should negotiate, because even in some of the dailies today, they're saying they struck because Nigeria was going to be affected.
Yeah, I don't understand. I mean, I agree that the two groups now, ECOWAS and the Coupists, are ranging out their options or their demands for for a negotiation. One would go around. One insists that they would begin to punish the former president, and then the ECOWAS say they would want to make sure that the Coupists are brought to book, or rather to hand over government power to the ousted coup. But let's assume that we decide that, or ECOWAS decides, or both parties agree that, look, what we need now is to return to constitutionality. It doesn't have to be constitutionality that is return Bazoum to power, but return to constitutionality. I thought usually the trend is arrange for an election. He may be part of it, he may not be part of it, and set a timeline. That has always been the trend. If if it's agreed this time, then that will reduce a lot of the tension that's brewing now.
Your response there has just fed right into my own question, sir. I was going to ask you about if you have the example of any country where there's been a coup and, a leader was returned to power. I mean, how was power managed thereafter if we've seen such a situation in the past?
Well, scanning my head, it's not quite easy to see, they repeat. Most of the coups we've been seeing, the person is ousted. It's either that there's a counter coup or there is some arrangement, but definitely we haven't seen an arrangement where they hand over back power to the person who is ousted, especially in a case where there was a very strong reason, within themselves, why he was ousted, having to do with his alliances with the foreign power and the feeling that he was not protecting the interest of Niger as the Nigerians would have expected, and so on. So, I think that answers the question, but obviously for peace.
I was going to ask how then that feeds, because some people will say that perhaps one of the reasons why I'm not making any excuses for the Coupists, but the question I'm trying to ask is how probable some of the requests, or let's say some of the demands that ECOWAS is making of the co-leaders, how probable they are when they say you have to return power back to Bazoum. I recall one of our analysts here in China was asking, that the number one question that ECOWAS hasn't answered is if the former president is returned to power, who is going to protect him, considering that it was the chief of guards who staged this particular coup. So very big questions around that arena. But, what constitutional, arrangements now can be made to right this obvious wrong that has happened in Niger?
Well, constitutionality means election. You elect a new leader, or either that is it. And the past threat, like I said earlier, is that you discuss the program for returning to constitutionality, not necessarily returning power to the ousted government. Time frame, ECOWAS will promise support for that return to constitutionality. That should be the emphasis of ECOWAS at this moment. But if it goes on if they go on insisting that it must be Bazoum, then I don't know what to expect from the Coupists. You can expect anything. Because when assuming they were to carry out this threat of trying for high treason, of course they would find reasons that he's been treasonable, and then high treason attracts death sentence and all that, or long incarceration. That's not necessarily good, but that might be part of the line they would do. So for now, ECOWAS should not say, you've done a coup. We understand why you've done, why there has been a coup and all that. When do you return to constitutionality? And then that should be the point of negotiation at this moment.
Well, I'm also asking whether we're doing too much with regards to these negotiations. I mean, we've sent two different parties to the coup leaders for negotiations. On two occasions, some of the teams that were sent were rebuffed. We made some headway. We saw how the 14th Emir of Kano, went on a private visit to the, is it 14th or 11th? We saw Emir Sanusi visit Niger Republic. He says of his own accord, but the president of Nigeria was aware, and when he came back, he went to brief the president. And then we've also seen a number of ulamas now visit the current Johnson leader in Niger Republic. Do you think that we're doing too much with regards to trying to make these negotiations happen?
Well, we're not doing too much. Nothing is too much to bring peace to our friendly neighbor across the northern border. So far, and the important thing that the efforts that have been made is working. At least from the point of all the former head of state and the Sultan of Sokoto with the wheat they carry went in. They weren't received, but I understand that the Coupists have now apologized for that act of what you could call insolence, but the subsequent visit have worked. So to answer, we're not doing too much. Nothing is too much to put in on this matter because our president holds the chairmanship of ECOWAS, and Niger is our close neighbor, and anything that happens there matters to us. So that's the point.
Ambassador, I'm not sure I've quite understood what you said in response to Marquez's question about what's going to happen post-dialogue in Niger. Of course, the hope is that, there will be a return to democratic governance, and you're saying that it comes down to elections. So whether or not the president, who is now not on seat, is restored to power, that is one thing definitely that the ECOWAS is asking: restore democratic governance, restore the president. But post this conversation, in the event of a return to democracy, what do you recommend would happen to the power balance in the nation? What happens to the military? What happens with the Democrats in the country? How do we sustain democracy without the fear that there could be another takeover?
Well, we shouldn't worry too much about what happens. Well, we should really, but that's not the point now. The point is to get the Coupists to accept that there ought to be a return to constitutionality as soon as possible, so that they blend with the democratic expectations of ECOWAS and so on. And then once that happens, in an election that is free and fair, then the army would go back to their barracks and no problem. This is not the first time it's happened. Of course, if ECOWAS was to do what it should do, we should now be talking seriously about what led to this coup and what is leading to the various other coups, especially in the Francophone countries. Obviously, a lot has been said about their feeling of being repressed, now being recolonized by their French former colonial masters, and that is no longer sitting well down to them. And there is obviously, we list some of the countries as the most poor, while they have quite a lot of assets. So ECOWAS must start dealing with these matters. Why should certain things be happening and that are not in the interest of ECOWAS Francophone countries? Then they would ask that question, find the answers. If it requires making a very strong input in it, they do. That these are the things that will stop coups, not anything else. Good governance, development, will of the people, meeting the expectation of the people is the key to solving the potentials of coups, possibilities of coups.
Okay. Well, Ambassador, you said the other time it's not the first time it's happening, most certainly. I mean, go back to 97, for instance, when there was a military takeover in Sierra Leone. It was Nigeria as well that took the lead in restoring the democratic governance at the time as well. Do you see any similarities between what happened in 1997 and what is happening now in Niger? I mean, the dynamics may be different. The irony is that the government of Nigeria at that time was led by the military, which opposed a military government in Sierra Leone and restored democratic governance. It's different this time around. So, but beside that, what are the similarities and lessons that you think we can learn from what happened in 97, and whichever one of them is or is not applicable to what's happening in Niger right now?
Well, Sierra Leone, you know, at the point in Sierra Leone's problem, it was almost like a heavy internecine war between various groupings, killing themselves and all that. And well, Nigeria, as the big regional, sub-regional power, decided that it's not good in the interest of the region to have a sister country suffer. I mean, be put under those stress. So we did what we had to do, and it worked. The same thing also in Liberia. The situation got very bad before Nigeria intervened to bring peace. Nigeria is also intervening now, even though the situations have not gone so bad or bad at all. In essence, the only person suffering now, if you would be just the president, the former president, and family members and people who are ousted. There has been no killing. In the streets, people are happy. And it's quite easier to resolve this time, in this particular case, without a full-blown war. Just a matter of getting the coups. Luckily, they have decided to negotiate and talk. So we must listen to what their problems are. We must listen to their plans. We must also keep an ear on the needs, the expectations of the people. Yeah, by the time we do that, a lot of things are coming out already. So it's easier to solve than that of Sierra Leone, that of Liberia, which became so bloody. I am still hopeful that ECOWAS will do the right thing now that the channels for discussions, diplomatic exchanges are opened. Let's not go to demand the indefensible, I would say, or what is probably not feasible.
Well, negotiations are always very tricky and fluid, as they say. I mean, one moment you're requesting for something, of course, you know it's not feasible, but of course to have that sort of space to get something maybe acceptable at the end of the day. But having served at the very top of, diplomacy, if I could use that expression, I wonder how foreign governments, intergovernmental organizations like the United Nations, how they respond to coups or military takeovers such as this one. Is there a protocol? Because there's that fear usually when coups happen, for example, in this region, which has been described as a coup belt, that there will naturally be foreign interference. So the battle is always being fought on different fronts. Within the nation itself, within the sub-region, perhaps a region as well, and then there's a battle between Africa and Western authorities or Western governments. Let's protect ourselves. So really, if you can give us an insight, what is usually the approach, the protocol to these sorts of issues?
Well, the UN is a mixed grill of all sorts of countries, some democratic, some not democratic, but the UN lives with all of them. The concern of the UN is to enhance peace and security. That's what the core mandate of the UN is. The trends for the past decades have been to allow the regional organizations, either the AU, and that had dropped down to EU, to try to vicariously deal with some of these challenges to peace and security. That's why, in effect, we're actually doing, ECOWAS is doing what the UN is supposed to be doing. But that's in order because it's not, that's the way it's arranged. Regional groups will try to sort out the problems. The UN doesn't approve coups or unconstitutional changes in government, but the UN is living with countries that made up of countries and living with the situation that countries are a mixed breed. Some are democratic, some are quasi-democratic, some are clean dictatorships. And life goes on. I think that at the end of the day, if it gets so much out of hand and there is need for war, there is the requirement that you will get approval of the UN. But of course, we know that so many countries, big countries, have gone to war against some others without even getting approval of the UN. In fact, with getting the disapproval of the UN.
Right.
So I think the important thing is what ECOWAS does in its sub-region on this matter, and the gates are still open for us to resolve this matter very, very amicably. And,
indeed, Ambassador. I just want to, I just want to get your thoughts on this final issue, really. Worst case scenario, well, maybe from this side, the worst case scenario, but you can't tell what the sentiments are in the country itself. But worst case scenario, which a lot of people have said, and I mean, you've said that there should be a return to constitutionality, but there's been that question about what is constitutionality. I mean, Nigeria's constitution, for example, says we the people. It presupposes, there's that debate, of course, that it wasn't we the people, it was just some people. But there is that assumption that a constitution is a function of an agreement of the people, or at least majority of the people. So worst case scenario, if the people of Niger, I mean, we've seen some narratives out there saying, well, there's been jubilation and the rest. If the people say, well, this is how we want things to go, majority of them anyway, this is how we want things to go, how do you strike that balance, really, between what the people of Niger want and perhaps what the region wants? ECOWAS saying return to constitutionality, and the definition of constitutionality is, well, return power to where it came from, and then we can have some sort of election, as you said. How do we strike that balance between what the people of Niger want and perhaps what the region, sub-region, ECOWAS wants?
Well, we can argue a little bit on what constitutionality in this case means, and what it would mean anyway is return power to a civilian government. It doesn't have to be a particular person. Return power to a civilian government, that military formations are not constitutional. Most constitutions say we the people, so it's not the we the military. Good. And that is expressed through an election. That's the constitutionality. So if they do an election and without problems, and it's free and fair and no problems after the elections, and a winner turns up, then that's return to constitutionality. I don't see any other interpretation to it. So the issue is just get a timetable from the Coupists and get them to treat everybody with respect, with their human rights and all that. So that means don't harm the president and so on. And perhaps even let him be a contestant, even if he may even be discouraged from being a contestant, but assuming that he wants to still be. But at the end of the day, there will be an election and a government emerges, and this matter of whether you need to send an army to enforce constitutionality against people who don't want an army, which is also not constitutional, who don't want an invasion, I mean. So It's a simple matter, but it shouldn't be. We needn't complicate it too much. The ball is the field is open. Let's talk with the Coupists, find a time frame, agree with them, and let's monitor how they are doing it.
What are the issues that you would consider most delicate right now? On the one hand, it would seem like, given the welcome that the people give these Coupists, as it were, one wonders whether or not the people actually prefer them. Another issue to look at that is, what are the issues that are really on the line here? Trade relationships, diplomatic and economic relationships with Nigeria seem to be on the line in the meantime, particularly because Nigeria shares borders with Niger. So which of these issues, listed or not listed so far, would you consider the most delicate or sensitive on the table?
Well, it all depends on how the ball rolls. If there is a war, we have a problem of refugees and IDPs streaming across the border. Our border will become more porous, and we let in probably people that we don't want to let into Nigeria. That could create more security problems for us. Of course, that would affect trade and interactions. It will also definitely affect the relations that we've had with a friendly country, because whichever way we see it, the invading army is an ECOWAS army that is headed by Nigeria, both because the political head of ECOWAS is now a Nigerian, and because also that usually Nigeria brings in the bigger number of troops, so where our troops will be more visible. And we already know that the cost of deploying an army across the border will add more to our economy that is, that's already stretched. And in fact, the army is even stretched itself in numbers. And so there are so many implications. There are so many reasons why we, Nigeria, would not want any war, and not even just Nigerians, the whole of the ECOWAS region don't need a war. What ECOWAS needs to do is to live to its name, Economic Community of West African States. We talk of the economic issues, talk of integration, talk of trade, talk of communication, talk of currency. These are the things that bring development, and with development comes peace, and that's just what we need in our region, just as the other world regions, the EU are aiming for and almost getting what they want.
Well, we have to thank you so much, Your Excellency, Joseph Anyalogo, former permanent representative to the UN in Geneva. He's also former Nigerian ambassador to Switzerland. Thank you so much for your thoughts this morning, and hope to God that there is no war or that this situation doesn't degenerate any further. Thank you so much for your time.
Yes, thank you, Chamberlain.
Okay. We're back right after now. Do stay with us.